Welcome to The Explainer. If you're a coach, a manager, a leader, or really anyone whose job involves developing people, you're going to want to hear this today. We're diving straight into a ridiculously practical framework from Fred Clements' book, 30 Coaching Tools and Approaches That Actually Work. We're focusing squarely on Chapter 13, which covers logical levels. We are completely skipping the academic theory today and instead looking at a real working toolkit designed to transform how you handle those incredibly stuck, frustrating workplace conversations. So let's start with a real everyday problem. You know the feeling, right? You're sitting there trying to help someone move forward, a team member, maybe a client. And despite giving crystal clear feedback, setting up goals, and literally mapping out action plans, they just keep hitting a brick wall. You start seeing this lack of confidence, poor ownership, or just totally stuck thinking. And let's be honest, you end up feeling completely uncertain about how to actually help them get unstuck. We see these symptoms all the time. We did label them as, a lack of trust or maybe weak feedback or just a lack of basic ability. But what if the real issue isn't what we think it is at all? What if the actual reason your coaching conversation is failing is simply because you're trying to solve the problem at the completely wrong level? That's the absolute core of what we're unpacking today. The profound difference between just treating surface level symptoms and actually finding the real leverage point for a breakthrough. Enter logical levels. Fred Clements actually calls this the Swiss Army knife of coaching because honestly, it is just that versatile. This framework was originally associated with Robert Dilts back in the late 1980s, who built on some earlier work by Gregory Bateson, and it is a brilliantly practical diagnostic tool. It essentially helps you step back and identify exactly where the real barrier sits. That way, you stop wasting time trying to solve the wrong problem. It's usually visualized as a pyramid building right from the ground up. This pyramid takes our entire human experience and breaks it down into 6 distinct levels, with each one answering a very specific anchor question. At the very base, we've got environment, basically where and when are things happening. Stepping up, we have behavior. What is the person actually doing? Then capabilities, how are they doing it? Above that, we get into beliefs and values. Why does this even matter to them? Then comes identity. Who do they actually perceive themselves to be? And finally, right at the peak, mission and purpose. For what wider purpose are they doing this? The key takeaway here is that our behavior never just happens in a vacuum. It's influenced by every single one of these levels. Now, the reason this tool is an absolute game changer for your everyday practice is that we so often try to fix things at the wrong level. Let's say someone tells you they need better time management. As a manager, your first instinct is probably to send them on a time management course, right? Well, that's a capability solution. But what if the real issue is that they genuinely don't believe they have the permission to say no to their colleagues? That is a belief problem. Throwing a capability solution like a training course at a belief problem is just a recipe for total frustration. It is never going to work. And that perfectly highlights the core dynamic of this entire model. The higher levels always influence the lower ones. Change almost always begins at the top and flows downward. If you can help someone shift how they view their identity or maybe their wider purpose, their capabilities and their everyday behaviors are going to naturally realign to match that new mindset. When you establish that clarity at the top, you create a massive lasting impact at the bottom. Okay, so how do we actually use this in practice? How is this going to change your very next one-to-one? Well, you have to listen diagnostically. You need to really tune your ear to the exact words your team member is using. For example, listen closely to the statement, "I do not know how to do this." If someone says they don't know how, they are speaking to you directly from the capability level. As a manager, this is an immediate green light to offer some training, maybe some mentoring, or just a chance to practice the gap. Here is purely in their skills, knowledge, or abilities. It's a very straightforward fix right at the level of how, but listen to the profound difference in this next statement. Imagine a team member who's facing a brand new leadership task and they say, "I keep avoiding it because I'm just not that kind of person." Wow, that person is absolutely not speaking from the capability level anymore. They are speaking from the identity level. They're talking about who they are at their very core. If you hear, "I'm not that kind of person," and you respond by giving them a tutorial on how to use a spreadsheet, you are completely missing the mark. No amount of basic skills training is going to help them until they actually address who they believe they are becoming in this new role. You've got to elevate your conversation to match the level of the problem. Section 1. Common pitfalls to avoid. While this is an incredibly powerful consultancy style tool, there are for sure a few critical traps you need to watch out for. First off, do not jump too quickly to the higher levels. If someone is completely overwhelmed because their environmental workload is just literally impossible, asking them about their higher life purpose is going to go down like a lead balloon. Deal with the practical reality first. Second, please avoid mechanical interrogation. Don't just sit there ticking through the 6 boxes like a robot. Also, be incredibly careful with identity work. If someone says, "I am a failure," those words carry some heavy weight. And finally, always link the insight back to action. Having a great deep conversation about purpose still needs to translate into everyday behavior. Section 2, the new starter scenario. To really ground this in reality, let's look at a highly practical example directly from Clements' book. He talks about working with a new starter who is feeling deeply anxious, totally overwhelmed, and pretty disillusioned with their role. On the surface, it looked for all the world like they were simply struggling with their daily tasks. You know, a classic capability or behavior issue, but by using logical levels, Clements has consciously shifted the conversation upward. They moved way beyond the daily task list and started exploring identity and mission. This allowed the new starter to reconnect with their family values, their community, and their sense of broader contribution. And here's the real magic. Once those higher levels were realigned, the quote-unquote capability issues and that deep anxiety quickly resolved themselves without anyone needing to provide extra technical training. And this brings us right back to our opening problem. Logical levels is the exact tool that stops you from endlessly treating surface-level symptoms with quick fixes that just don't stick. It gives you a structured, incredibly reliable way to diagnose the actual root cause. It helps you step back and say, hold on, are we dealing with an environment problem here, or is this actually an identity problem? By finding the real leverage point for change, you save a ton of time, you build massive trust, and you actually help the person move forward. So just as a quick diagnostic recap for your own practice this week, always listen closely for the exact level the person is speaking from. Use those higher levels to influence and shift the lower levels. And remember to always turn that deep, meaningful insight into practical, everyday action. Whether you're navigating massive organizational restructures, handling everyday team development, or just sitting in a one-to-one conversation that feels completely stuck. This framework is exactly how you move someone from total confusion to absolute clarity. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a provocative thought, something you can apply directly to your own team right away. What is one current coaching or management issue sitting on your desk right now where the logical levels framework could help you find the real leverage point? Think about that specific person who is stuck and ask yourself honestly, what level are they actually struggling at? For more information, head over to clementsconsultancy.com to buy a discounted PDF copy of the book, or head over to Amazon for the ebook or printed version.